say that from the very inception of SEO, Bob has been right there at the creative cutting edge. And Bob is now serving on the board of directors for BAIPA, and I will now turn it over to you, gents.
Okay, and I think I'm up first. If you don't know, who doesn't know what SEO is? Anybody not know? Okay, you should by the end of this hour, so you're going to be fine. So just as a quick overview, there we go. This is what the day is going to look like. So for the next 50 minutes or so, we're going to sort of deal with an overview of what the heck metadata actually is, and a few tips as how to best use it, and specifically how to use it to sell your books, which is what we all want to do. By the way, these slides are already up at stillpointdigital.com BAIPA, so /BAIPA /keywords.pdf. And I will leave them up there for you to download, but only you, because you're here. So I'm going to say that one more time because I know that's a little hard to see. Stillpoint Digital, one word, .com /BAIPA, BAIPA /keywords.pdf. P as in Paul, D as in David, F as in Frank. We're going to take Q&A. I have a pretty good feeling that you guys are going to have a lot of questions, because it can get into fairly technical stuff. So we're trying to leave at least 20-25 minutes at the end for you guys to ask questions. So unless there is something that you can't see, or I say something that contradicts something I said earlier, that Bob says something that contradicts what I said, if you have a really specific question, please feel free to raise your hand and stop us. But if you could hold your questions until the Q&A period, we'd appreciate that. We're going to take lunch. And then for those of you who are staying in the afternoon, which is I hope a lot of you, we're going to have two sections. One is sort of exploring keywords and categories in depth. Okay, both what they are, where you can really take advantage of them, but also some tools for finding the best keywords. Okay, and how to find the best categories, that sort of thing. And then from 2 to 3, we're going to shift into a focus on advertising. Now, not all advertising is keyword-based, but a lot of it is. And so we're going to be talking about keywords and advertising for your books from 2 to 3. And we are also going to try to leave a lot of time for questions in the afternoon as well. Okay? So does everybody have the URL for the PDF that wants it? It will show up again at the end. Question? It's already posted. These slides are already up there. Oh. I'd rather you didn't. But if we wanted to share with the membership, I could make these available, and we could put them up on the site. Do you have a quick question? Yeah.
I just wasn't clear if there was a period somewhere in there.
Yes. Digital.com. That's the URL. Stillpointdigital.com /BAIPA /keywords.pdf. And I'll share. Sure. We can do that. Okay. So first of all, I want to talk about why we care about metadata before I actually explain what it is. So I was looking up while we were all introducing ourselves this morning, and last year over 1 billion books were sold. 1 billion actual sales were sold last year. Okay? Worldwide. That's pretty good. That's a lot of books. And that's more than the year before and more than the year before that. According to at least one source that I was able to find, over 1 million new titles were published in 2018. 1 million! Now there's two parts to that. One is, well, hey, there's 1,000 more sales than new books published, so that's great. But not so much. There's a lot of books out there, I guess is my point. There are millions and millions of books. Not all of them have ISBNs, not all of them are in print, not all of them are ebook, not all of them are audiobook. Some of them are all three, but there's a lot of books out there. And so the question always that comes up at these meetings, every Q&A session, is how do I get people to know about my book? And the answer to that, the one-word answer, is discoverability. Okay? How many of you have heard the buzzword discoverability, right? You hear that a lot. Well, what does it actually mean? It means making it so that people can find your book. Making it easy for people to find your book. Now in the old days, that was all about having a great cover and about having a good distributor and a marketing arm that made sure your book was at the front of the bookstore, on the table as you walked into Borders, RIP, right? Well, now a huge proportion of all books sold are sold through the internet. So there is no front table. I mean, and even if there were, most people don't see it because they don't come in through the front door and type Amazon.com. They are doing a search on Google or doing a search on somewhere, and they end up on Amazon in a particular place, and then do searches from there. So there is no front door, there is no front table. So how do you make sure your book, the people who want your book, the people who will love your book, will find it? And the answer to that is metadata. Another buzzword. Isn't that helpful? Well, what is metadata? Okay, here is the dictionary definition of metadata. Meta is beyond, data is information, right? A set of data that describes and gives information about other data. How helpful is that? Not terribly, unless you replace that last phrase. What do you think the other data that we care about is? Our book. Our book is the datum that we are pointing at, okay? You can even look at your book as data if you feel like it, but the fact of the matter is that the meta part is what we care about in this conversation because we're trying to help people discover our books, and we're going to do that by creating this set of data that describes and gives information about other data, which is our book, okay? So, another way of putting it is that it is data that can be searched by users to find your web page or product, not just your book. So we're going to be talking a little bit about, Bob especially will be talking about keywords in terms of web pages, blogs. All of this is extremely important. You're going to see me, we're going to use this phrase over and over again. This is my favorite definition of metadata. Metadata is the question to which your book is the perfect answer. Okay? It's a metaphor. But I think it's one that helps, especially for those of us who are not numberheads, which is most of us, I would imagine, understand what we're talking about when we're talking about metadata. People come onto a website and they do a search. We want our book to be the answer to their question. So metadata is the question to which your book is the perfect answer. Now, how many of you watched Sesame Street with your children, or possibly even yourself? I am just at the upper end of the people who are just too old. It was not on the air here in California when I was that age, but it wasn't when my brother was. So anybody remember the little song that they used to sing? One of these things is not like the others. One of these things doesn't belong. I want you guys to play that game with me. We recognize all these, right? Okay. Which one of these things doesn't belong? Okay, why?
Because we don't know what it is.
See, I know what it is. This is my little thing. Well, Alta Vista was the premier search engine back in the 90s. So, having said that, which one of these things doesn't belong? You were right the first time. You know why? Why were you right the first time?
Because Amazon is a search engine.
So, what is different about Alta Vista as opposed to the rest of these? It's defunct. Okay? Google is a search engine. We know this. Bing is a search engine. Some of us know this. It's Microsoft's answer to Google. Do you know what they do when they can't find an answer on their own thing? Do you know what they do? The Bing server Googles. That's really what they do. Alta Vista is a dead search engine. And Amazon, which we think of as a store, yeah, sure, it sells things. It is first and foremost a way for people to find the product they want, but more importantly than that, the product they don't know that they need. Okay? Which includes our books. So stop thinking of Amazon as a store. Amazon, first and foremost, is a search engine, just like Google, just like Bing, just like Yahoo, which doesn't really exist anymore, even though you can go to Yahoo. It's actually Bing. It is. And then Bing, if they can't find the answer, will Google. So there you go. So you need to start thinking of Amazon as a search engine. And on that note, I'm going to hand it over to Bob.
Thank you, David. So, SEO is search engine optimization, an acronym that has taken off. And for those of you who have heard this story before, I'm going to bore you with telling it again for those who haven't heard it. But essentially the story of the birth of SEO. I had been in the music lawyer business as a lawyer for what I would now call formerly famous rock bands, which included the New Riders of the Purple Sage and, for the purposes of this story, the Jefferson Starship. And we had built a website. We were an early web design shop called Cybernautics, and we had built them a website at the, I thought, easy to remember URL of jstarship.com. And they were very happy with the site. It had a lot of black star fields and sci-fi imagery. And one night after a gig in Cleveland, they wanted to show it to the promoter. And God bless them, none of them could remember their own URL, which is a testimony to the drug intake the band was famous for. And they did what you would think they would do, or well, you would think they would remember it, but they looked it up on Alta Vista, which was the search engine at the time. And they were, to their great dismay, they found themselves in the bottom of page 2. And they were sufficiently upset, ripshit was, I believe, the word they used, that they empowered their road manager to call me in the middle of the night, and again, in the parlance of rock bands, like to use rip-a-bob, a new one. Because they had the grievance that was rather hard to argue with, which was that anyone looking for Jefferson Starship was looking for them. And why weren't they number one, and what kind of crappy web builders were we that their website was not number one? Now, this was 1995, And no one had really thought much about, I mean, we had just begun to think about building websites, let alone making them number one. The only way I could get them off the phone, they were, sort of behind the road manager yelling, like, you tell it to him. But the only way you could get them off the phone was to promise to make them number one. So we went into the office the next morning and had the coders reverse engineer everyone that appeared ahead of them in the search engine, which was all fan sites. And the common denominator, we discovered, was that all those sites had used the word Jefferson Starship more often than we had used the word Jefferson Starship. And discovered that if we ran the word Jefferson Starship in tiny black type against a black starfield 2 miles down the page so that no one could see it but a search engine, lo and behold, 4 days later when they re-spidered, they were number one. Now this is a technique that is called keyword stuffing, and it has been a no-no for the last 20 years. But it's all that mattered back in 1995. And we let them know they could go look themselves up and be at number one. And they were so pleased, we were on speakerphone, that they asked the innocent question, this great thing you did for us, what do you call it? And my partner and I looked at each other and we, not having a better answer, said, well, we call it search engine optimization. I said, you should do that for other people. And so we did. And people ask, why didn't you trademark the name? And my answer generally has been that then nobody would have used it. But in any event, that is the story of the origin of search engine optimization. And much of what, other than keyword stuffing, worked then, still works now, even though we've gone from AltaVista and Lycos, which, for those of you with a good memory, was the other search engine that they could have looked themselves up in, to Google and Bing. So, what are the fundamental tenets of SEO? Well, first of all, and this is based upon not just having a book, but having a website, and I think David and I would agree that everybody who has a book should have an author website or a book website. How many of you people have a book but not a website? A few of you, good. So the 4 basic areas that all spiders are looking at is your URL, your main title, your meta tag description, or the description field, and your content. And some of these things are things you can do things about, and some you can't. Google looks at how long you've had your URL, and you can't fake that. So one that's old in the tooth is a good thing. But you certainly can do a lot about your main title, your description, and your content, and a lot of those factors have to do with keywords. So where do people look for your book or for anything these days? As David pointed out, it's not just search engines. YouTube is a search engine. It processes 30 billion searches per month, which makes it bigger than Bing, Yahoo, Ask, and AOL combined, second only to its parent YouTube.
Google.
I'm sorry, parent Google. And Amazon, which is bigger than Google for product search, which is why Amazon is a search engine. So what are keywords? Search engines match the terms people key into the search box with what they know about the billions of pages on the web. So what you should be doing is thinking, what words and phrases will potential customers use to find me? And it's worth mentioning that keywords is not a single word, it's a keyword phrase. So if people are going to type multiple words into it, that's a keyword. And probably more to the point, in Amazon, when they let you put in the 7 keywords, they don't mean single words, they mean keyword phrases. So, as David said, the metadata is the question to which your book is the perfect answer. And later on I will get to it. To me, it's a central metaphor that winning at search is very much like playing the TV game show game Jeopardy. You want to be the answer to a question that people are asking. So, is there metadata attached to your book?
And this is, I think, key.
And this is up to David.
Okay. So, when I use that buzzword metadata, I don't know what image comes into your head. So I'm going to show you a book, and we're going to talk about what that we're looking at is actually the metadata. Okay. You may recognize this book. It's mine. So this is actually side by side, but it's the Amazon page from my book. Okay, weeks ago. Okay, and you've got all the normal stuff. You've got my name is way up in the upper right hand corner there. You've got the title. You've got all this stuff. You've got reviews. You've got editorial reviews. You've got description. You've got product details. All this stuff. Ranks. Okay, what that we're looking at up there. Anybody want us to yell it out or just guess? What is metadata up there? Let me show you. Everything with a red line is metadata. Is metadata, for the most part, that I control. Okay? The cover is metadata. Now, we're not going to talk about the cover a whole lot today because we talk about covers a lot here. But you need to think in terms of the cover as part of your metadata. Remember that whole idea of putting your book out on the front table at Borders? And that was how you sold books? Doesn't work quite that way on Amazon. On Amazon, if you're listed in a string of books, you have to have a cover that jumps. Well, I know, as a matter of fact, this cover is quite good for my target audience. I didn't design that one, by the way. I got a designer and he did a brilliant job. The title, the subtitle, my name, the formats, that's metadata, okay? The ISBNs, both 13 and 10. Did you know that the ISBN 10 is the number that Amazon looks for as your print book identifier? Yeah. Yeah. There's something called an ASIN. Amazon Search Index Number, I think is what it's called. They have their own ID number for your ebook. Or if you're selling a doodad, for your doodad. The one that they use for print books is your ISBN 10. So that's a piece of metadata. Here's the description, all of it. Ooh, actually, up there. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. Editorial reviews, I added those in my Author Central account. About the author bio, also added in the Author Central account. And every single piece of the product detail, okay? The series name, the length, right? Both the format and the dimensions, height, weight, width. Language, okay? We're going to talk about all of these. In fact, I have a list. Here you go. This is the list of the metadata. Now, most of this is visible on that page, okay? And this is in the order, as nearly as I can tell, this is my own experimentation, in which Amazon searches, okay? So, the first thing it's looking for is the language, but in most cases, for most of us, we're writing and publishing in English, not all of us. And we're competing against English language books. So that's not one that's too much of a concern. You don't have a whole lot of control over that one. The title is the second thing that it looks for. So if you've got a really generic title and somebody does a search, I don't know, Love Story would be a classic example of a title that I would not recommend anybody use. It was a bestseller in 1971 or 72 or whatever that year was, but it's a terrible title Because at this point, 1 million people are going to type in love story. And you're competing against all of them. Okay? Guess how many books show up when you type Risico? Uno. Not even the other books in the same series. Okay? Subtitle, and I'll talk about all of these in great depth. The series is metadata. It's something that gets searched on. People will look for it. So when you are naming a series, think about it. The edition. That was the first paperback edition. The special Kindle edition. I mean, there are all kinds of things. You don't have to just type one. Okay? Or leave it blank. Metadata is there for people to search on. Use all of the fields. Author name or names or collaborators, and we'll talk about that. Description, publisher or imprint. A lot of you leave that blank. And then Amazon shows up, or KDP shows up as the publisher. Or you put your name. Well, this is another thing for somebody to search on. It's a brand that you want to build, even if you've only got one book. Think about the imprint. Okay? Publication date, you have no control over that. That's whenever you published it. Author bio, that goes on in Author Central. Reviews, same. That's the editorial reviews. The ones by the users, you have no control over after all. Don't worry about them. They take care of themselves. If you get a review you don't like, paying attention to it only does you ill things. Don't feed the troll. Format, so paperback, hardcover, ebook, audiobook. Those are the most common ones for us, right? And each of those is a different thing that somebody could search on. Risco audiobook. Young adult audiobook with a strong female protagonist. The format matters. Dimensions. Yeah, again, you don't have a whole lot of control over that. 9x6, whatever. But people can search on it if they want to. Rank. People don't search directly on that so much, but the ranking on Amazon is something that you get into bestseller lists if you're a certain rank within a category. So rank matters for people who are browsing. And now we get into the invisible keywords. When we think of metadata, when I talk to people about metadata, this is the first thing that they think of. But guess what? It's the last thing Amazon searches for, almost. Almost. Category. And category is not meant for searching as much as browsing, but you can search on it too. And age range, which for like a teen novel like mine is important, but if you're writing adult stuff. Unless you're writing really adult stuff, which I also publish, in which case age also is important. So the ones that I'm going to focus on now are the ones in red, because those are the ones that you actually can use to market your book. Okay? So title, subtitle, series, author name, description, keywords, and category. Don't worry, I just went through them very quickly. I'm going to go through them one by one. So this is what the back end of the KDP. Can we see this? Can you guys see this? Not very well. Can we turn off some lights? Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm better? Not really. I'll tell you what. How many of you have been on KDP?
Turn the lights off, please.
No, it's not gonna work.
It's not gonna. It's still very small. I could try making it bigger, but to be honest, yeah, that doesn't work.
Just describe what's up there would be okay. Just talk through as you were going.
Yeah, well, again, it's the same stuff. Language, book title, subtitle, author, collaborators, edition, series, that's what that is, series, and then contributors and author. Description, publishing rights. Well, if you don't have the publishing rights, you shouldn't be up here. And if it's public domain, they probably don't want to publish it. So, just so you know. Then we get into keywords. Here's the keywords, and we will look at those very closely. Categories, again, we'll look at those. And age range. Okay, that is a typical KDP page. All of that is metadata. All of that is stuff to search by or browse by. Is it, if you're going to ask a question about this that isn't about what I just said, I'd really like you to hold the questions until we're done, because we're trying to cruise on through and we should get plenty of time. Okay, this is a little bit easier to see, hopefully. Come on.
Too fun.
Oh, shoot. Okay, here we go. Can we see that? Okay, those are keywords. Now, remember what Bob said? When I say keyword to a lot of people, what they hear is, okay, what one magic word is going to get my book to be sold? Actually, that is a good one, but only if your book is actually free, at which point you're not going to make a lot of money on it now, are you? Unless it's the first in a series, but that's a tale for another day. Loss leaders. Whoever was here in the morning and heard me talk about loss leaders in the Q&A, free. So did I put one word? Amazon allows 7 keywords. A lot of other retailers and distributors allow fewer or more. Nook allows you 100 characters, which ends up being fewer.
Can you read one or two of those?
Sure, I got it. I will. But you can see that it's more than one word, yes? Okay. Each of these keywords allows 50 characters. Now, up until this year, or last year, 2018, my advice to people who were putting keywords together, Woody, we talked about this, was to come up with a 2 to 5 word phrase, natural language phrase, that people might put into the search bar that would be a good question for them to ask that would get them to your book. Make sense? So the idea was a 2 to 5 word natural language phrase. Don't write that one down, because that isn't true anymore. This last year, I was at WorldCon, the World Science Fiction Convention, and I was talking to another publisher, and I was talking about keywords. Because, boy, is that an exciting thing to talk about at a science fiction convention. But we were talking about it, and I said, well, 2 to 5 word natural language phrase. She says, you know what, I always did that, but what I found is that actually they stopped searching by natural language phrases, and they'll just search all of the individual words. Okay? And I said, oh, no, it couldn't possibly be. And I tested it right there. And I did a search. Okay, so the first one, it used to be just the first 2 or 3 words. So teen assassin, Japanese historical novel, strong young female protagonist. Those were the kinds of keywords that I had, because they were things that I thought people would actually type in. Okay? So what I did as a test was put in a bunch of things that I thought would only show my book, but from different fields, different keywords. So I put sword, Sengoku, which is the Japanese Civil War, medieval, Japan, series. Okay? Now, if this was a natural language search, my book shouldn't have shown up. Or it should have shown up as one of many, because all of those words show up in other people's books too. You know how many books showed up? Mine. And the other books, I have some prequel short stories in the same series. So only my books showed up, which proved to me that she was right. So what I am now saying is, look for words that your reader, your ideal reader might find. We'll talk about how to do this. And then put those in, fill those keyword, all 50 characters, all 7 fields. Because any blank space that you leave there is a waste. That's a thing that somebody might search on that won't turn up your book because you didn't put it in there. Okay, make sense? Carl.
I would call it a new form of stuffing.
Except, here's the thing, and we'll talk about stuffing. I actually got into a whole conversation, not Jane Friedman. Thank you, Joanna Penn. And I saw my article on this, and she and the guy who actually created KDP Rocket, which we're going to be talking about in the afternoon, got in a whole conversation about my idea here. And they called it keyword stuffing. And here's the difference. Keyword stuffing is, first of all, don't ever, ever, ever put words up here that don't actually apply to your book. Ever. Okay? But, oh, we're going very quickly. But, what keyword stuffing does, okay, what Bob talked about, is taking a bazillion words and just throwing them up onto a page. These are all words that actually apply to my book. Every single one of those is one that I had considered as a keyword. Okay? But because Amazon now doesn't do a natural language search, it does a search for all of the various words and all of the various keywords in no particular order, as nearly as I can tell. I tried doing the search in different order, made no difference. Didn't change the order of the books, didn't change the books that showed up. They don't care. And so in fact, it's not keyword stuffing, it's just taking advantage of all the keywords that are available to you.
So you could basically have 30 keywords. It looks like you have
Oh,
5.
and you can't see all of them because I blew this up. Unfortunately, I zoomed in, and so the words got big. But there are 50 characters. If each word is an average between 6 and 7 characters, and there's a space between each one, we'll call it 7. Let's call it 7. Well, 50 goes into, 7 goes into 57 times, with 1 left over. So average, probably about 7 words per field. 7 words per keyword.
Does the space count?
Yes, it does, unfortunately. Space counts as a character. And the fact of the matter is, keep typing until they stop you. And if you've got space at the end, put a short word.
And of those approximately 50 words you use up there, are they all different?
Ah, thank you. One of the things that this did, again, natural phrases is how I used to do it. At that point, I would have Japanese historical novel, teen historical novel, because the historical novel was one that my research showed me was a good fit for my book and that people actually searched on, so I would have it show up more than once. But since they search on every word in no particular order, no, it no longer makes sense to repeat. It no longer makes sense to use articles or prepositions unless they are really essential. Of, in, at, the, those sorts of things no longer make as much sense. So, and I have 2 articles. If you go up on Joel Friedlander's thebookdesigner.com and search on Kudler, Kudler, and keywords, you'll see my 2 articles where I show the research that I did to find this. But I have now found it to be very true for the last 4 or 5 months. What I've been doing since WorldCon is that as I put keywords in for each of the books, I'll put many, many more in than I used to. I'll get rid of all of the repetition, all of the words and phrases that repeated, so that I can use even more. And what inevitably happens is the sales go up. But they don't necessarily go up enormously. But because now what's happening is, I get somebody who searches on strong young female protagonist, strong young teen protagonist, strong young tween protagonist. She's 13, so she's not really a tween, but it's a middle grade young adult book. Woman protagonist. They will take care of plurals for you, so don't worry about adding plurals. But if there are variations on a particular word, okay? Warrior, fighter, woman, girl, lady, female, all of those. Use the variations, especially if that's an important part of the search that you think your ideal reader is going to be doing to find your book. Does that make sense? Okay, question? And then I do want to talk about categories.
Yeah, I was curious, where did you find this page? Is it on Amazon?
It is, okay. Have you published a book on Amazon?
I have, but I didn't actually do all the technical parts myself.
If you go on the KDP,
Okay.
on kdp.amazon.com, find your book in the list of 1 or 25, or in my case, I think I've got about 80 titles that are up there. And now it's both print and ebook, right? Because CreateSpace is going away, if not gone. We all know that, right? That you do your paperbacks on KDP now, just like you do your ebooks. So, the first page that comes up is that page that I showed you with all that metadata. It's huge volumes of metadata. For some bizarre reason, there were 2 pieces of metadata that are not on that first page, but are on the second page. The ISBN, which is kind of the first piece of metadata, right? And we can talk about ISBNs if you guys want. Everybody always wants to talk about ISBNs. Or, the other one that is on the second page is the imprint, the print publisher name, your imprint. Why are those 2 on the second page at the bottom of the page? I have no idea. They should be on the first page with the rest of the metadata, but they aren't. Oh well. But the first page, and the keywords are about 3/4 of the way down. It's keywords, categories, age range, and then something else. Okay? Ruth?
What about using other author names?
What about using, what words are verboten? Okay, what are the words that are not okay to use in here? You know what you can use? Swear words. You can use 4-letter words. You can use just about any word you can think of except an Amazon trademark. You can use the word Amazon, but you can't use the word Kindle. Nope. You can say best ebook, but you can't say best Kindle book. Okay? You can't say Kindle. Free is one that they allow, but they get cranky about sometimes. And the other thing that you cannot use, and I'll tell you something about that, is somebody else's trademark, another author name, or a title. But here's the funny thing. These are all out of order. So I have, in fact, you can't say Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, but you can say Harry, teen assassin girl, young, strong female protagonist Potter. You can do that. But you can't use the author name as a phrase, as a natural language phrase, or the title name as a natural language phrase, because they will bounce it back to you and tell you you can't do that. But you know where you can use those and should? Maybe, maybe not. That's still an iffy thing. In theory, actually, you're not supposed to use authors that you do not have the right to publish, to sell your own books. People do it all the time. But you're not supposed to say, if you loved, Dan Brown and whatever, Dr. Seuss and Dan Brown, you'll love this, whatever. You're not supposed to do that. People do it all the time. Usually the big publishing companies, when they do that, do their own authors. And if you're Random House, everybody's your author. Wait, let me just finish that question. So, you can't do that in your KDP keywords. It's verboten. They will bump it back to you unless you obfuscate the way I just talked about, by mixing the words in to the rest of your keywords. If it's really important to you that Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone be one of your keywords, then you can mix those in. They probably won't notice, and they probably won't yell at you. Wait, hold on. What is the place where it is absolutely essential that you use your competitor authors' names and their titles to define keywords? Where is that essential? We've talked about this.
In the ads thing, when you're buying.
When you're doing, and we're going to talk about this in the afternoon, when you're doing keyword ads. Because if I am selling a book that is what's his name, Patterson? Yeah, whatever, Patterson. I can't stand him. I really don't like his books, but that's me. Everybody else likes his books. That's the important thing. If I'm doing a James Patterson knockoff, and it's really essential to me that the people who love James Patterson see my ad, guess what? The first thing I should put on my ad is James Patterson. Okay, and then the title of his books that are like your book. Because that is not just accepted, it is essential. You want to show up on the page where your competitor, so when they show up on the Amazon page or the Google page, having searched for your competitor, don't you want your ad to be right there? So that, okay, they're looking at the other book, but they're like, oh, what's this? And they click on yours and they buy yours instead of James Patterson's. Right? So, keywords. You can't usually use other people's titles or author names in your keywords. And then I'd like to move on to categories, but one more question. Did I answer your question, Carl?
Just in terms of does Amazon give you feedback if you're using a keyword that they don't allow?
Yeah, it's called no. They'll bounce, you'll submit the book and they'll say, that's a forbidden keyword, don't use that keyword. If you do it again, we'll bounce the book. If you do it again, we'll bounce your account. It's called the ban hammer. Yes.
So
Ruth.
in these fields, should you repeat the most important?
No. No. Just to repeat. She asked, should you repeat the important words? Do you know how many times they will consider that? It's not like SEO in 1995. They will see it once.
Okay.
As nearly as I was able to tell, they will not give you points for saying assassin, 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 assassin. But instead, you're better off saying assassin, killer, murderer.
But you can use these words in the description also.
Oh, that's something else. And these keywords, do not stuff these keywords this way into your description. However, do you know how many characters Amazon and a lot of the others allow you put in your description? 4,000 characters, including HTML tags if you are like me and like to use HTML tags. Okay? 4,000. That's a lot of letters. Again, 7 letters to a word with a space. However many times that goes into, I mean, that's a lot of words. Use them and make sure that you have variations on your keywords, but it has to be natural, because otherwise somebody's going to read a description and it's going to look like a menu. It's going to look like a list of vocabulary words, and you don't want that. What you want is a description that pulls them in, excites them. And I'll talk a little bit more about how to do that in the afternoon, but
Still on this page, I thought first you said that you could use a keyword you like in several of these 7 places.
no, I used to do that. You use it once, but you can use okay.
But I see several on yours, like historical, I think I.
Oh, it shouldn't be. There shouldn't be. Is historical there more than once? Yes, it is. That's my mistake.
At the bottom of the
Yeah.
list.
That's my mistake. I did that wrong. This was one of the first books I did this to, so I went and did it very quickly. This was
Where is that page?
it is, once again, the first page when you go on the KDP page for your book. It's at the bottom of the first page.
David, you have 25 minutes.
I know.
Quick on this. Longtail Pro, how does that relate to this?
Okay. Long tail, does anybody know what a long tail keywords are? Long tail selling? Long tail is a marketing concept that says what you want are books that don't just sell 1,000 copies today. You want a book that sells 100 copies every week for the next 50 years. Because 1,000 copies today is great, but 100 copies for the next 50 years is a lot. Okay? What you want is what's called a long tail. You want, it'll have a boom at the beginning, but it'll keep going. It won't dribble off to zero. It will stay selling steadily. And the way you get that is with keywords. But here's the thing, and this was what Joanna Penn was talking about in her thing, and it's an excellent podcast. If you get a chance to listen to any of her stuff, it's great. And the one that they talked about, long tail keywords, and the rest is great. Hold on. Long tail, and I don't know what Long Tail Pro is.
It's just the program that has Longtail.
Yeah. The idea, and there are lots of them, and we're going to talk about some this afternoon. There are lots of tools for coming up with ideal keywords. And what all of them are trying to do is to find you keywords that are long tail keywords. Long tail meaning things that will keep marketing your book for a long time. But you know what? I was talking to with Becky right before we started. Keywords are highly ephemeral.
Yeah.
Okay? I experienced this the hard way. I found for some of my books, some of the romance books that I published. I'm pointing over here because there were some of the books that were over there. There was a keyword that I found that killed. It sold really well, and I knew that it did because when I added it to a title that had already been out for a while, the sales immediately bumped. Okay? And this was about 3 years ago. And so this was when it was natural phrases. Well, I'm not stupid. I know I've got a good keyword. I'm going to add it to all of my books that fit that keyword. Not all the ones that I have, because the ones that don't fit the keyword, I don't want somebody reading my children's picture book about Japanese New Year to find out about teen girl assassins. Okay? I'm not going to put teen girl assassin into my children's picture book. But any book that keyword fit, I put it in. All the sales were good. And then about a year later, I looked again, and they were all flat. Anyway, a couple of them were selling. And when I looked, what I realized is when I did a search on that keyword, everybody else was using tools like I was, and they had figured out that I was killing it using that keyword. And so the rest of them started using the keyword. And so in fact, I needed to refresh my keywords and find new ones. So as much as we like to talk about long tail keywords, and the best ones are ones that really fit your book, all of this stuff is stuff you can't set it and forget it. You really do have to recheck your keywords and rethink them.
How often?
Oh, as often as you can stand. Do a search on your book in Amazon or on Google and see how well a particular keyword or keyword set of keywords does at finding your book. And if you think that it describes your book perfectly and it's not showing your book in the top page, then you need to rethink your keywords. Okay? We're going to talk more about keywords. We're going to have questions in a minute. We're going to talk about a lot about keywords in the afternoon. I want to talk about categories. Okay? KDP allows you to choose 2 categories. Here are the 2 for my young adult historical novel set in Japan in the Middle Ages, Risaka. Juvenile fiction, because they don't yet distinguish between juvenile and young adult, which is really annoying.
Yeah.
Historical medieval, because that's what it is. It's set in the 16th century. Okay, pre-modern. And juvenile nonfiction, which it isn't, but it's the only way that I could get in. People and Places, Asia. Now, do these two precise categories show up on the front end of Amazon? No! You don't have a juvenile fiction, historical, medieval category. You don't have a juvenile nonfiction, people, places, Asia category. Where my book shows up is in young adult fiction, historical Asia. And young adult fiction, historical, medieval. Okay? Because I've got keywords in here that Amazon looks at. They change their categories constantly. What they don't want is a category that has 5 books in it. What they want is a category that has enough books in it that people will go and browse it. So they're constantly shifting if there's a category that isn't doing well, or a category like romance. Never use romance as your category. You know why? Yeah, if I do a search on romance, I will find about 1 million books. And how likely is it that your book is the first 20 on the first page? Nil, unless you are Danielle Steele. Okay? She just published a new book, that's why I thought.
What about historical, isn't that?
Sure. So, juvenile fiction, historical, medieval, young adult, historical, Asia. How many books do you think are released every year in that category?
Both of them.
Yours.
Mine and somebody else's. Okay? The book, my book was the only book on the best-selling new young adult historical Asia book list, bestseller list, for 6 months. Because nobody else had published in that category. That was ideal. Because I could just say I'm a bestseller, and I was. Okay? The idea is to find categories that fit your book, but that aren't huge. You want to find the smallest niche that fits your book perfectly. And that can take some jiggling because their categories are weird, especially Amazon's. I'm going to talk here. Most of the other retailers use a system called BAIPA. It's put out by the Book Industry Study Group. And it has a categorization system that bookstores use, libraries sometimes use, mostly they use Dewey Decimal or Library of Congress. But think of it as the Dewey Decimal system for bookstores. It's a way of setting up categories for shelves that makes sense in terms of the books that are being published today, not the books that were being published 50 years ago. So they constantly refresh these. So there is now a separate juvenile young adult category, as of about 3 years ago, but not on Amazon.
How do you tell the size of those categories?
You go on Amazon, and they are in the left-hand column. Okay.
What's the size? Does it say?
If you click on one of them, it will either say next to it in the left-hand column, or sometimes it will say up at the top. Or if it doesn't say in either of those, if you go down to the bottom and you look at the number of pages and multiply it by 20.
Which page of Amazon?
Any page. Go to a category. Click on. Go to the left-hand column, and it will say categories. When you start, it'll be house goods, books, right? You click on books, it'll say romance, historical, mystery, because it knows you and it knows what you like to read, so it'll put the stuff that you like at the top. Click on that, and it'll become a subcategory. Click on that, it'll become a subcategory. Click on that, it'll become a subcategory. You keep going down until you find a category that fits your book perfectly. But here's another thing. My book fits many categories. All of ours do, right? My book is a young adult historical medieval, young adult historical Asia. It is a coming-of-age story. It is a bunch of different things. What I do to take advantage of that is, guess what? I've got my ebook, and I've got my paperback, and I've got my hardcover, and each of them has different categories. So that, remember what we said, metadata is the question to which your book is the perfect answer. Well, if my book is the perfect answer to more than 2 questions, right, 2 categories, guess what? If I have different categories for each of these, they have to fit perfectly, because it would do no good to put my young adult historical novel in the World War II biographies section. right? That would be stupid, because somebody would go there and look at it and say, this isn't a historic, it's not a World War II biography. I don't want that book. They have to fit your book, but you can put a different category for the paperback than you do for the hardcover than you do for the ebook. Okay? Question?
The process of choosing categories, I'm just presuming when you click on where it says on the page you've been discussing, you just click on the button and it offers you some options.
Yeah.
You pick one, and then you get some more options.
You are allowed to check 2 boxes. Don't check any of the top the top level categories. Mystery, fiction, nonfiction. No, don't choose fiction as one of your categories. That's a terrible idea.
Mystery.
Click on fiction. It'll open up a whole little accordion. You'll see, African American is the first one always, and then it'll have, click on that, it'll show contemporary, romance, it'll show a whole bunch of things. Some of those will have subcategories of those. And so you want to get down as far into the subcategory, and then you check a checkbox when it's your category that fits your book. Does that make sense?
It does.
And that too is on the first page of your KDP, if you're just thinking about KDP.
Yes.
If you're talking about Ingram Spark, it happens in the 3rd or 4th screen, I can't remember where.
All right.
Hold on a second, I'm going to run through some pro tips, and then we'll open it up to questions for me and for Bob. Okay? You've heard some of these already, but first pro tip, subtitle. Use that as your hook. Add keywords where possible to your subtitle. Think in terms of your subtitle, because remember, that was the 3rd thing, if not the 2nd, that got searched on. 3rd, after title. Right? Language, title, subtitle. So if I have the keyword in the subtitle, I'm going to be a more relevant result than if I only put it in the keywords, if I hide it in the keywords. So for fiction, that's a perfect place to identify your genre and subgenre. And the example that I used in one of my articles, and it's a good one because I saw this, a book called The Kidnapped Bride. If I use the subtitle, A Sweet Historical Romance, that will get me a different group of readers than if I put a BDSM erotica thriller. Same title, different subtitle, totally different readership. The cover should also clue them in to what they're getting, because the people who want to read the Sweet Historical Romance do not want to read